as far as the situation in Sudan is concerned, we're now understanding the External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar in fact has tweeted on Operation Kaveri, that is to bring back stranded Indians from Sudan. Operation Kaveri gets underway to bring back our citizens stranded in Sudan. About 500 Indians have reached the Port Sudan. More on their way. Our ships and aircraft are all set to bring them back home, committed to assist all our brethren in Sudan. Let's first bring in our colleague Abhishek Jha, who's been tracking these developments. Abhishek, this is going to be big relief for those Indians stranded and their families back home as well. Talk to us about the efforts that have been made by the Indian government to rescue Indians.
Since 15th of April, ever since this whole conflict has risen in Sudan between the two sides of army and rapid paramilitary forces of Sudan, India has been trying to evacuate Indians as soon as possible and as safely, because the External Affairs Jaishankar meeting has held several long conversations with his counterparts in the region. And also he's been in touch with foreign ministers of UK, USA, Saudi, Egypt, those who have a stake in that region and those who are, some sort of helpful in evacuating their own nationals. We have seen Indians being evacuated by Saudis, Indians being evacuated by, on Saturday, French military helicopters who made almost 3 sorties. They also took almost 5 Indians from that conflict-ridden state back to the safe region of Jeddah. And now we are learning that India has managed to take almost 500 Indians to the port of Sudan, where INS Sumedha is awaiting, and most likely very soon they'll be boarded on board that Indian Navy ship and they'll be back to home. Meanwhile, other Indians who are stranded in Sudan, in Khartoum, in Darfur and other conflicting areas, Indian Embassy in Khartoum has been in touch with them regularly. They are being asked to be in the safe shelter as long as they can, or before the Indian Embassy or the Indian mission could reach out to them and evacuate them safely to some places.
Abhishek, we'll just request you to stay on with us. Let's also bring in our colleague Siddhant Mishra. Siddhant, so as per the tweet, we're understanding about 500 Indians have already reached Port Sudan. In terms of numbers, do we have any clarity of how many more are left?
Well, absolutely right. This is a big confirmation, or perhaps External Affairs Minister Jaishankar himself decided to announce that evacuation process has started in Sudan, and India has successfully managed to bring 500 Indians stranded in Sudan to Port Sudan. Now, Port Sudan is a very strategic location in Sudan, and in fact, it is a port city of Sudan, which is near to the Red Sea. Now, we have INS Sumedha, which is positioned in Red Sea, and then we also have 2 C-130J transport aircraft of Indian Air Force positioned in Jeddah. Now, the strategy is being worked out how to rescue, how to evacuate these 500 Indians back to the country. And here you look at these pictures which have been posted by External Affairs Minister Jaishankar himself. The Indians holding national flag, and then also it is a makeshift arrangement which has been made at Port Sudan, and all this could be possible after efforts which have been given by the government of India. We were in touch with the government of Saudi Arabia, we were in touch with the government of UAE, we were in touch with Americans, we were in touch with France, and in fact this morning we got a confirmation from France also that 5 of our citizens have been rescued by the French government. So this is a big development, because right now it is one of the most complicated evacuation ever in the history. And in fact, while I was speaking to a senior officer in the ministry, the situation in Sudan is complicated. Situation
as Siddhant is pointing out, Siddhant, I just apologize for interrupting, because we're getting some other visuals now coming in as well. As this evacuation process is on, we're understanding the French armed forces and diplomatic teams are also organizing evacuation flights, which also included Indian nationals. So France is also helping as far as the evacuation process is concerned. Let's go back to Abhishek also. Abhishek, the government had already started taking a lot of steps, a lot of diplomatic channels had opened to try and understand what is the best way and the fastest way to get our citizens out. Now we're understanding France has also stepped in. Talk to us about the kind of efforts that France and other countries are also taking in.
So we have seen that Saudi Arabia has taken out 2 Indians. They were safely evacuated, and they were stranded because they were, flight crew, and they were in Khartoum because of some flight, and then this whole conflict erupted very suddenly, and the flight takeoffs were cancelled from the Khartoum airport. So they were stranded. So those 2 Indians were evacuated by Saudis. Now we are learning that 5 Indian citizens have been evacuated by French military planes who had a base station in Djibouti, and from there the French military flight took place, and from there they have evacuated almost 380 about French citizens, and in that 5 Indians are also included. But now the massive evacuation that we are reporting has been announced by External Affairs Minister, and where he has said that India has been able to bring all these 500 citizens through road or other means to the Sudan, where INS Sumedha has been stationed, and very soon these Indian citizens will be on way back to home safely.
Well, that really is the big update, and as we pointed out, this is going to be big relief for the Indians stranded and their families back home, because the governments have worked together to try and get their citizens back to India. Let's go back to Siddhant also. And Siddhant, I apologize for interrupting earlier. Talk to our viewers about what the current situation in Sudan is. A lot of ground reports now showing that people have had to leave their homes. They've just had time to pick up their emergency stuff and leave and not know whether they'll be able to return ever or not. What is the ground situation like?
Well, look, we don't have official numbers, but going by the data which has been published, then there are more than 3,000 Indians stranded in Sudan. These Indians are mainly from the state of Karnataka, and they belong to Hikki-Pikki tribe, which deals in traditional medicine. Now, these Indians were in Sudan for trade purposes. Many have got settled also. And the challenge before the Indian government was that the number of Indians are more in comparison with other nationals in Sudan. So US has done the evacuation, France has done the evacuation, Qatar has done the evacuation, Saudi Arabia, but they have less number of people. There are more Indians in Sudan. A. B. The situation is very complicated. When, despite having negotiations with both the forces, the fire was opened on US convoy. When Qatar diplomat was looted by the forces en route Port Sudan. So you can imagine the situation, how complicated the situation is in Sudan. And this is perhaps the reason that Indian government was, taking each and every step very carefully. In fact, on his visit to Latin American country, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar did decide to meet UN Secretary General in New York, because the initial plan was that if possible, the arrangement could be made so that the Indians could be tagged along with the UN rescue team. So that was plan A. There was a separate plan which was of getting Indians evacuated with the help of Saudi Arabia and UAE. Then the third plan, obviously, to get them evacuated on their own. And now the third plan has been executed successfully because the idea was
confirmation
to bring,
is now in fact coming from the External Affairs Minister that Operation Kaveri in fact is underway, which means as many as all 500 Indian nationals will be reaching India soon, and the rest will follow after that as well. Siddhant and Abhishek, thanks a lot for getting us all those details.